take a real close look at what you've been given, cause what you've been given better be the truth you be living. Take from the material, put it back into ethereal energy, till you feel it in the ground, coming up through your roots, till you feel it in your roots. This ain't no time to be living a lie, because the truth is, above us and below us there is only sky. Above us and below us there is only sky. Above us and below us there is only sky. Above us and below us there is only sky.
Enough light? All right. We just came back from a conference, Contact in the Desert. James Hurtak was there and lots of other people. And to say the least, it was intensely focused on E.T. Now, E.T. isn't very much my thing, but
there were a lot of other subjects.
There was a lot of subjects, yes, correct. And there was Graham Hancock, there was James Hurtak, there was Childress, there was Eric von Daniken, and a variety of others. It all came for me at the Heads, where I was invited on a panel, which I didn't fit in this panel at all. I mean, we had, you saw that, right?
And I loved your
It was just too far out for me, but that's the kind of conference it was, and fair enough. But it made me think that there is not enough discussion, or let's put it this way, I've began to coin a term called intelligent speculation. Anybody can speculate. But there is a difference between if you speculate from a foundation of knowledge. So I got the idea from a TV program I saw, or was it a YouTube? I can't remember. Neil Tyson, the theoretical physicist, who was asked, already was told by some religious interviewer, said, don't you feel a bit guilty that you guys are physicists, you're theoretical physicists, and you're explaining everything in terms of, you know, and you're demystifying everything, and there's no more magic around, and you know, don't you feel a bit bad about this? You know, you're removing the mystery of the world by trying to explain everything. And his answer was, and I'm using this as a basis of my argument, his answer was, yeah, if you're going to speculate, don't speculate from a point of view 300 years ago. Speculate from where we stand today, from the edge or the frontier of knowledge. So the question is, where is science today? And James will certainly help me or correct me, but because of the way that science has developed over the last 30 or 40 years, or rather starting from the big change in the way we saw the world with Copernicus, for example. Copernicus, in the 15th century, worked mathematically that the Earth wasn't the center of the universe. The established view from the church, from the scientists themselves, few, if any, scientists accepted this conclusion, although it was true. When Galileo, 100 years later, actually demonstrated it by observing through the telescope, it took a while, but eventually scientists began to accept this. It was mathematically proven, it was observed. There was no more question about whether it was true or not. It was true. So if you go now in the street, I use this as an analogy, and you stop anybody in the street and you say, I want to tell you about the Earth. It's a globe, and it rotates on its axis, and it goes around the sun, and there's a lot of other planets around, and there's lots of stars. Our sun is a star, and we are in a galactic, and there is many other galaxies. No problem. No problem at all. You won't get burnt. 300 years ago, you did. Now, everybody accepts it. However, if you go in the street and you meet Joe Bloggs, what do you call him here? Joe Smith? Normal, regular, beer-drinking...
Joe Blow.
In England, we say Joe Bloggs. Joe Blogg represents, your regular, straightforward, fun, beer drinking, working guy. You meet a crowd of Joe Bloggs, and you tell them, you could be. There's multiverses out there. There's many universes. There could be many universes. There could be parallel universes. You could be in another universe at the same time. You could be alive or dead in another universe. And there might be pyramids. And in fact, if you move if atoms move in your left arm and spin in a certain direction, there might be atoms in the other side of the universe, in an elephant or something or another creature. And he would think you're utterly mad. Utterly mad. But if you say the same thing to a theoretical physicist, he will not find this strange at all. And the reason is because that's the way it is. That's where physics is at, because of quantum mechanics. I don't like to use the word mechanics, because when you talk to Joe Bloggs, when you say quantum mechanics, he thinks it's mechanics. Well, in a sense it is. But it is the way that the small world, the atomic and subatomic world works. And it works in a very weird way. But what I'm interested is that once you get into that level of thinking, then you realize that everything is the same. It's just the way that the elements have combined to form a chair or wood or we will call it, or a quail or a tomato or a galaxy. So since we're all made of the same stuff, and incidentally, the stuff that we're made of is indestructible. Once we go down to that level, you can, assuming that there may not be further subatomic particles, the smallest particle are the electrons and other subatomic particles. I think 17 they found what they call the elementary particles.
Even the cosmion now, a new particle in the periodic chart.
They found a new one.
Yeah.
All right. Now I know
Cosmion. C-O-S-I-S-M.
They're hoping to find the graviton. And although we know gravity exists, we haven't found the particle yet. This is the last big one. However, there might be more. In fact, as James will certainly confirm, that there is, of course, all these new string theorists arguing that, in fact, within each subatomic particle there is a little string, infinitesimally small. Unfortunately, they can't see it, so they can't prove it. It may not exist. But the theory works, the mathematics works, and string theory gets even more weird, because in order for string theory to work, you need to assume 11 dimensions, and we're getting into the very, very strange stuff. The point is that we're made of indestructible stuff. Everything is made of the same stuff.
And everything is vibrations. Everything comes out of vibrations. Which is why I'm so much interested in your work, because I met Robert many years ago, and after many years of his work in Egypt and my work in Egypt from a different perspective of high energy physics and mathematics, we find ourselves at the same conference sharing notes. And an interesting complementary aspect of his work is so important, because, as you know, the Great Pyramid is one of the great mysteries of Western civilization, for that matter, Near Eastern civilization. Years ago in the 70s, I had the opportunity to get this picture from the top of the Great Pyramid before all of the modern reconstruction that you see. And the so-called fence that Zahi Hawass put up that was 18 kilometers around the Giza Plateau, which was a prohibition really against independent researchers. And so Robert and I are both independent researchers, but we have in common the idea to reduce theory to practice and to realize that everything is vibration, and that there's a whole acoustical science there in Egypt that is connected with each of these particular temples as wonders unto themselves for every one of the basic disciplines.
But I think you're going to add, are you going to talk about what you discussed at lunch, where in addition to pi...
Okay, what I wanted to bring out is what's coming out of this monument. Now, I have always resisted, as James may know. I developed the Orion correlation theory in the middle 80s. I eventually published it in a book in '94. And before I published, I happened to meet Eric von Daniken. He invited me to his place. Now, I honestly was not into his stuff at all. But of course, he was the granddaddy of ancient mysteries, and I went to spend a weekend with him. And he said something, he said, Robert, you do the classical stuff, which I was going to do anyway. You know, the pyramids are religious monuments built by them, but you have found something that, although he knew very well would be resisted, there would be a lot of arguments, it's very convincing. So you do that and leave the rest to me, he said, you know, the ET stuff, which I did. And honestly, I would not have got involved in any woo-woo stuff until, and I've read your stuff, and I said, let's leave this stuff to others. It's not my thing. But I was giving the analogy of the pigeons. Who was at my talks, by the way?
Panel.
You were at the panel.
You were at this talk. Yeah.
One of your sections,
Yes. Okay,
And if
because
have
you weren't there.
pigeons on your,
Here is a good one to start talking when you talk to people. I was giving a conference in Milan, with my wife was there, and I was giving it in Italian, and I was trying to find some sort of easy metaphor to the resistance that one will confront if you bring an original idea, especially if it's controversial or it goes against the consensus. And the thing about my theory is that the first reaction I had from archaeologists and Egypt was that it was a coincidence. You can't ignore the correlation, it's there, you can see it. But the question is whether it's a coincidence or not. And so I said, you know, imagine, because we're near the piazza, near the cathedral, there was a lot of pigeons flying. And I said, imagine if a pigeon came and settled on the table in the middle of my conference. And you would say, well, yeah, interesting coincidence, I mean, nice. Then comes a second pigeon, and you say, oh, it's a strange coincidence. And then comes a third, and comes a fourth, and comes a fifth. At what point do you stop saying coincidence? Now, there are people who will wait for 6 pigeons before they start saying it can't be a coincidence. There are others who are quite happy to say after 2 pigeons. There are others who will wait for 20 pigeons. And there are others who will wait forever. There are those that by that time you give up, because no matter what you say...
You must have attracted those pigeons.
Oh, yeah. Now, the question is, I had a pigeon resistance. You know, I needed about 6 pigeons before I started thinking about what people were telling me about the pyramid. And what finally broke it is my very insisting brother. I have a brother who is 7 years older, he's your age, and he's an architect. But he happens to be a natural mathematician. He's frightening, he can do calculations in his head. You know? And he kept pestering me since we moved to Spain 10 years ago. We were quite apart for a long time. One of the reasons we're quite apart is that I grew up being the ugly duckling of the family. He looked like James Dean. Very annoying to have a brother who looks like James Dean. You know? My girlfriend used to run to me. I never brought girlfriends home. So introduce me to your brother. So anyway, he kept pestering me. And I finally started listening. There's another fellow who kept pestering me for years, an Englishman called Gary Osborne. But also, where it got heavy was the dean of the Barcelona University. And what they've done is that they've used all the facilities of the university, computer engineers, mathematicians, structure engineers. They brought them all together in a team. And they've designed the pyramid. They did something called reverse engineering. They sort of took the pyramid apart, if you like, and went back to the root of the design. They were surprised by 2 things. They were surprised that, first of all, in order to reconstruct the pyramid, to redesign the pyramid, they would have to use their computers, because the design is so complex. Not so much because there are rooms here and there, but because the mathematics that it incorporates, if you want to put all these mathematics together, it would require a very, very, very sophisticated computer program to do it. So they were puzzled by that the designer was a genius or he had some facilities. The other thing is that they concluded, and I have to say, and I was telling James, I don't have the mathematics on my side it's early days. But they have concluded mathematically that there was, and that's why I think you got interested, The pyramid, in fact, is not a square base. It is the sides are very slightly, there is an indent, if you like, making it into an 8-sided pyramid. So it's hardly noticeable to the naked eye. However, because of this indent, it produces the kind of mathematics that convinced them, this team and others, and James seems to have arrived at the same conclusion, that there was a globe on top of the pyramid. I always thought that there was a pyramidion, small pyramid. This globe is bizarre, first because it's a globe, a hypothetical globe, we haven't found it. And because of the mathematical qualities it has, it contains what we call the E factor, the irrational number of E, which is 2.718, whatever. And it combines with, of course, because it's a globe, it combines with the value of pi. Now, a ratio between E and pi is what mathematicians, physicists have been trying to work out, because they believe that somehow the E factor and pi, these two irrational numbers combined with the speed of light, is somehow going to produce or help them with refining the equation to combine quantum mechanics and classical physics. So, wow. I mean, to me, finally, I was at pigeon number 6, and I thought, okay, I better take a look at this. It so happens that strange noises going on.
We call it in German the Erdgeist, the vibrations of the earth. But essentially, think of the Egyptians having the speed of light.
Well,
Thousands of years before the present Christian era.
but the question is, where did they get it from, if it is correct?
Yeah.
And this brings me to another line of investigation. It so happens that while all this was going on, and they were trying to get me to pigeon number 6, all these mathematicians, I was proposed to write a book with an astrobiologist, a very famous astrobiologist. He is originally from Sri Lanka. He's now retired, he's 75 years old. Professor of astrobiology, physics, cosmology, you name it, mathematics, at many universities in the UK, Cambridge. He's got several degrees from, he's top guy. And we've known each other for quite a long time, and finally said, look, why don't we do a book together? And I said, why me? I mean, I'm not a physicist. And eerie. Eerie.
Open the door to a new space and time.
And he said that the reason he wanted to combine a book with me was that he had taught all these cutting-edge new sciences for 60 years. He's the one, by the way, in the 70s who proposed the panspermia theory with Sir Fred Hoyle. And he had
It's so important. In fact, I did a documentary with Carte Blanche from South Africa on panspermia about 4 years ago. And now this has been recognized. Before it was just the theoretical, but now it's been accepted by the large new generation of scientists.
Yeah, the proof hasn't come yet, but according to Chandra, they're very, very close. Technology is allowing them to predict that if there is life out there, they'll know it within 10 years. It's a big if, but they have the technology that is being improved. They're sending these very sophisticated balloons to pick up dust from the stratosphere and so forth. Anyway, yeah. But he said, look, I've taken it as far as I can. And I want to speculate now.
Good.
But I want to speculate intelligently. And I said, well, yeah. But in my field of Egyptology, I mean, even the mildest of speculation, they go bananas. I mean, after all I said was 3 pyramids look like 3 stars because the Egyptians believed in their destiny in those stars, and look what happened. I mean,
I remember telling Robert Schuck many years ago, I said, don't worry, I said, Egyptology is romantic history. Very people take it seriously unless you've got a track record. So what I admire about you is your field work.
right.
Because without the mathematics and the physics of being able to put the modeling together,
Right.
you're talking blue sky.
Well, I was a great believer, I still am, that I decided to fight the opposition, the resistance, on their own turf. And therefore I used their books. I simply arrived at different conclusions. But I never quote you, I never quote Graham Hancock. I don't, because I know the minute that I provide them with ammunition to dispense it. Right. And I've made one hell of a dent. I mean, and the last one was done unknowingly to me, is that the theory was rigorously tested by a university in Italy to falsify it, and to their surprise they couldn't. And they published it. It's not published. So anyway, it's not really about me. It's about what is intelligent speculation. And well, Chandra said, well, I've got 60 years of science behind me, and therefore I can project ahead intelligently. And he's open to anything. He's open to God, he's open to extraterrestrial, he's open to, because anything is possible in the universe that we know today. Now we come to the ancients, so what's it going to do with me? I mean, I'm studying ancient Egypt. And he said, well, he didn't know much about ancient Egypt, but he knew a lot was about Vedic texts, ancient Indian texts, where, to his surprise, he had just come from a conference in India, where there was all these experts in the Vedic texts, and to his surprise, the cosmology and even numbers that are produced in these texts very much resembles the physics that he's involved with. And so he said, the question is, and I said, well, yeah, strange, because we're getting this stuff, my brother is haunting me, we're getting these strange numbers from the pyramid. So the question is, if that's the case, where did they get it from? Now, of course, everybody jumps on they got it from E.T. You know, they got it from them. Well, why not from us? Totally. And the question is, okay, but how? And that is where I got interested, because as I delved into quantum mechanics, as I delved into the latest neuroscience, as I delved to the combination of neuroscience, because ultimately everything is atoms. So now the domineering science is physics, because zoologists, biologists, neuroscientists are all involved with atoms. Ultimately, everything is atoms. What's interesting is the brain, what goes on in the brain. And I'm a great believer that because of what I've been delving in and the discussions I've had with Chandra and all this, that it should be possible. It should be possible because, of course, if we are made of the stuff that originated from the Big Bang, these atoms, if we are not just made of this stuff, but if we govern the laws of physics within ourselves, I mean, every time you pick up a cup or toss a football or even walk, walking requires that your brain knows the exact balance of the gravitational pull in order to get your body working and functioning properly as you're walking, or running, or jumping. Look at an athlete. Look at somebody playing tennis. Instantaneously, this man unknowingly performs all the laws of physics.
We're wired up to have trillions of functions.
Yes.
We are a masterful microcosmos in the way
Absolutely.
we're formed.
So my conclusion is we're a walking universe. We're made of the same stuff. And the brain and presumably the DNA, whatever, is all part of this mechanism. If it is so, then how come we don't know? How come, as I'm sitting here, I don't know how my blood is being pumped, how my cells are being repaired, how my DNA is instructing my cells? What if I can connect to it? Is there a way to connect to it? And this is perhaps where you might come in, is I believe that well, of course, sooner or later you're going to butt into the great mystery, consciousness.
Well, if I can say this in a few minutes, I was interested in Robert's work with the Great Pyramid and also his concept of the so-called missing capstone to be more of a spherical form. And back in the 70s, my research team had been on top of the Great Pyramid. Here's a picture, rather rare, of our team of guides dancing on top of the pyramid because of the energy flux they felt coming up through the stones themselves. Over the years, we conducted, with permission of the Egyptian and the Department of Antiquities, several experiments with very sophisticated computers and software programs. All of this not being published because of Zali Hawass, who was the modern pharaoh who didn't want anybody really to cross his tracks. But now that he's out of the picture, so to speak, I was telling Robert that we came up with various micrographs, or as you see here, profiles of the sound waves reflected not only in the chambers of Egypt but other pyramids throughout the world, suggesting that there was a type of spherical, circular activity that was sought after in the raising of consciousness to altered states or higher states of creativity, and that would be logical that at the top there would be more of a spherical energy form rather than the traditional triangular form or the pyramidal capstone form that has been argued by classical Egyptologists.
But what would that be made out of, that spherical form?
No idea.
Would it be a type of, what do you guess?
Okay, we're kind of moving in.
Okay.
We're moving in two different directions.
Two different
We're
directions.
looking at the idea that there is an energy physics produced by the pyramid itself. And we've been able to describe this and illustrate this in actual films that we had in various locations, one of which I have brought with me, which is published on the cover of one of our musical CDs called, quote unquote, The Living Capstone. Here you see the Grand Gallery filled with light. This comes from a momentary burst where the sonic structure was such that in a paraphysical standing column or wave was excited long enough that a picture could be taken showing this golden light flowing through the interior of the ascending chamber.
So moving from the 7 basic structure of the pyramid and moving into the 8, which is more of an octagonal structure, which is really, that would bring more into balance the structure of the pyramid as well as the connection to the stars or
the human participant would momentarily experience in the expansion of consciousness this spherical nature of the energy field surrounding him or her. Desiree.
And I just wanted to add a couple things. It's interesting you said 8, of course, because there is this kind of concave structure, but if you count the bottom, you actually get 9, which is actually very symbolic for a lot of the things in ancient Egypt. And I also want to say we're coming out with a book in the next year. It's one of our 3rd books to come out shortly. And it talks about the water flow, because we were the first actually to go underneath the tomb of Osiris with the sonar and remote sensing technology.
You were there in 96?
We were there in 94, I think?
93.
93.
You were there in 93.
We were the first ones with the shore expedition.
Oh, I see, okay.
And so...
Sorry, you're Desiree, no?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I'm looking at the light, I
No,
can't see.
sorry, no problem. Anyway, so we were there at the shore expedition and...
Shore was 93, and then, but he went back down there in 96. 96, yeah.
But, I mean, so here's Dr. Hurtak with the remote sensing. But what I'm saying is water is very interesting in this area. For some reason, not only are all the structures built along the Nile, but the water seems to be sucked underneath the ground.
Here I'm holding the small radar unit, the SEER B unit that we went to map out the entirety of the subchamber complex.
But what I want to add is they recently, just last summer, found that in the Kukulkan pyramid of Chichen Itza, they found that it's actually built either over a sinkhole or a cenote. And chances are it was intentionally built over a
Of course, because
a
it
cenote.
is the conductor. Water is
Thank
the
you.
conductor for the energy.
I think
That's
we're
why
deviating
lines
completely
come
from...
together
No, but
under these
we really, we
multiple.
can move back to consciousness because we
No, okay,
lecture on
the
consciousness.
point is that assuming that these monuments are
Yeah.
more than what we think.
Exactly.
And if they are more than what we think, then the question is, how did people who supposedly were of an epoch where there was no technology, no science, no mathematics that we know of, where did they get it from? And we come to the
Other.
we come to the crossroad here. Did they get it from somebody else? And if so, where did somebody else get it from? I believe that it wasn't either somebody else or an ET. I believe that, again, because of where I was leading, is that we are capable of tapping that information ourselves. To put it in a different words, there is a way to get to a higher level of consciousness that will reveal this information, this mathematics. But however, for some reason that I still cannot understand, they needed the hardware of a pyramid. Somehow they needed these structures. Now,
And they understood what we now call E in terms of the mathematics.
yeah. So the question, we come to this. Now, is it possible or not? Is it possible to... Okay, first let's get into where this information is. And the term information is the big word now. We may call it the laws of physics. We may call it knowledge of how things move and light and frequency. But ultimately, it's information that exists from the beginning of the universe. That's how the universe works, with its pre-designed information. And it's in us. There's no question. There's no question, because the mechanics that we perform and the processing that we perform clearly. Now the question is that we'll come back to this subatomic level. If it is stored in there, there's no, for example, we say DNA and we call genetics, and we say that the DNA, the cell is instructed by the DNA to multiply, to repair itself. Liver cells do one thing, and blood cells do another, and brain cells do another. But we simply say that. The question is, how do they pass the information? And are we privy to this information? Can we get to it? Is our brain wired to all this? It must be, since we're part of it. I'm beginning to believe yes. I don't know how. I gave 2 examples in my talk where I narrated stories, I'm not going to go through this again, where for a very brief moment, seconds maybe it lasted, I felt that there was a part of my brain that I managed to access very briefly. Maybe because, now, Graham, for example, Graham Hancock argues that he accesses the spirit world by taking ayahuasca plants. He perceives that he is, in a manner, he is connecting, he is linking up to what he calls the spirit world. He perceives it outside. I don't think it's the case. I think that ayahuasca provides perhaps a confusing, perhaps a distorted, perhaps a good one, I don't know, I've never tried myself, to rearrange the neuron circuits, the synapses, in a way that it receives that message, it sees something else. I think the ancients were able to do it. I think that the Egyptians were able to do it.
And you mean
How?
Huh?
Without.
Ayahuasca.
Without.
Any, I agree with you.
But how you're saying?
I think ayahuasca is merely, it's a bit like saying, look, I can't feel happy, so I'm going to have a couple of shots of bourbon, and I'm going to feel happy. What ayahuasca is a much more powerful thing, is I can't feel the spirit world, so I take a few drugs. I think it can be achieved. In fact, I know it can be achieved because I've had 2 experiences, and I'm one of these 6 pigeon guys, believe me. It takes a lot to convince me.
Well, they had a mystery school. Their mystery school was all about training their consciousness.
Exactly.
Not
Now, we know that the Egyptians had, indeed, intensive initiatory processes. We don't know much about it, but they're certainly involved. Well, what seems to be involved here is astronomy, or the knowledge of the mechanism of the sky for some reason.
And the alignments on Earth.
Yeah, well, clearly they took a lot of time and efforts to make sure that the hardware of this, I call it call it what you like, the immortality science, the science of rebirth, whatever, but they needed this hardware. And that is where I'm puzzled. They needed this hardware that is somehow designed in this very complex mathematics, and with this very, very, very very intense astronomical factors incorporated in it. I don't know how it works. I honestly don't. All I know is that they believed, or they were absolutely sure it worked. And our task is to figure out why. Now, quantum mechanics has opened the door to see this, because quantum mechanics and neuroscience, I'm combining both now, and I'm involved with two top scientists in both these fields. It's very interesting to combine both and to see, looking at the big thing, the galactic system, the stars, and then looking at a very small thing. Because we have here an amazing processor of which we are partially conscious. I'm conscious about seeing you, I'm conscious about talking to you, I'm conscious of James talking about his experiences. I'm conscious that in about 15 minutes we'll have to go. But I have
why does the human conceptualize with these strange symbols? Is it because it's already embedded within the circuitry of our brains that we project outward through higher states of consciousness? Is the Great Pyramid some type of astrophysical computer as well as a biofeedback system? I mean, these are questions that you have entertained and I've entertained. When I was teaching at the University of California years ago, Professor Thompson came up with the realization through the electron microscope findings that in the human brain we have what is known as pyramidal cells. And these act as a subducting process of collecting information, which then allows, in certain states of consciousness, to overcome the synaptic gap, where one side of the brain and the other have what we call hemispherical balance, or of the harmonic. And I'm suggesting, as your work has well shown, with the two shafts going into two different directions, that you have two sides of the brain's ways of looking at spherical reality amongst the stars, as well as looking at, from the inner side of the inner hemisphere of human knowledge, that are put in equipoise, in balance. And that is where a person becomes the cosmokratos, it's in Greek, one who balances the inner and outer universe. The higher state of awareness is the realization that we are a walking universe and a co-evolutionary part of the ongoing journey.
Well, you know, in
Schwaller de Lubitz.
In Schwaller de Lubitz's book that Robert Lawler translated, in the introduction it says, sound made the ear. So the universe as a cosmogenesis factor made our human vehicle, and then we reflect the cosmos back in our higher actions, like building the Great Pyramid, right? That's what I feel. We are the vehicles of the cosmos to reflect itself in the temples.
And the four chambers of the heart are the sound. Each chamber is a sound, and the Egyptians truly believed that the heart was the seat of everyone's memory.
Now, we have mapped this out through software in terms of musical language and mathematical language, and that is the gift I want to share with Robert. It's one thing to speculate, it's another thing to dream visions, but to actually do the studies
Yes.
with the Egyptian
Okay.
permission is another aspect.
I was going to, I'm just seeding an idea here. So, and that's what I've been trying to do in various conferences. I started this in England 6-7 months ago. This kind of discussion, what I call intelligent speculation. The danger is if we take it in a route that I understand what you're saying, and it's very interesting.
Well, it's also scientific.
Well, yeah, well.
But you have to gather the information. You
Yeah,
have to do
the thing
fieldwork.
is that, you know, whether we like it or not, my message to all these talks I've been giving is we can carry on talking about it forever. I mean, you know, and speculate and reason out. But where it will really work is if we bring it to a point where there is a paradigm shift in the way people see themselves and see themselves in this universe and see themselves in relation to the ancients. And the only way it's going to be done is with hard, rigorous investigation. Now, I'm known for that. I annoy a lot of people when I go to conferences because they expect me to be extremely open to all suggestions, and I'm not. It takes a lot to convince me. But when I get interested, when I get to pigeon 6, then it becomes interesting. It becomes interesting for me. I leave it at that. My view is that there is a need to bring researchers who are going through the rigorous process, through sound tests, instrumentations, all these tests, mathematicians, architects, because slowly, the argument becomes not only more rigorous, but it's heard by many. Because it's okay for us discussing this in this room, and of course, at the contact desk, you have a very receptive audience. So it's fine. I mean, but there's only, 4,000 people there. There's 7 million people out there who's not going to listen to this stuff. And certainly, the keepers, the custodians of these sciences and archaeology are not going to listen to this stuff unless it is presented in that rigorous manner. Otherwise, we're wasting time. But it's a great fun. So my mission, my own mission is to bring it such that it begins to cause a paradigm shift, because we need well, because science has taken us there. If we had 2 or 3 theoretical physicists here, it would be a lot of fun, because then we can talk about us being in multiverses. We can talk about perhaps being a simulated universe. All these amazingly, soundingly very crazy ideas, which are within the intelligent speculation. The Egyptians knew something. They managed to tap into it. They managed to get their level of consciousness. Unfortunately, they were overpowered. The whole thing disappeared because of a power system. Rome came and it all went. The hardware is still there. We're missing the software. We must bring it together again.
Actually. Huh? But anyway, it doesn't matter.
Well, I want to, for me, I mean, everybody, there's plenty of research to do. For me, it's the Great Pyramid. The Great Pyramid is the most,
knowledge that can open the door.
It's the most promising monument to get to this. There are many others, of course. The apparatus is there. The apparatus is there. We have the same brain. What seems to be very different is that the process of using this brain. I mean, we were comparing. I mean, for example, memory. I was looking into the capacity of brain memory. Correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, the figures vary widely because, of course, it's a very difficult thing to assess. But not only the capacity of the human memory is enormous. I mean, they're estimating it to be how do you call it, terabyte?
Terabytes.
Terabyte, yeah? What is it? 1 million.
Terabytes or something in the brain.
Upwards of several terabytes.
Okay, anyway, the point is, it's enormous. But it is so sophisticated. I mean, we can record feelings. I mean, that's where it becomes interesting. If you can record feelings and thoughts,
Not the brain.
and sensations, then we're recording immaterial things. Your computer at the moment doesn't record immaterial things because they don't exist physically. Thoughts are not made of particles, as far as we know. Feelings are not made of particles, and yet it records them. So that suggests to me not only its amazing power, but that there is something ethereal about it.
So our brain has got disintegrated in a sense?
Well,
I don't know, I'm Greek. so-
let me tell you, since you're Greek, they say that Pythagoras used to be able to recite volumes and volumes of books. We know this. We know that the Italian Renaissance Magi were able to do that. Giordano Bruno could recite. They say that even certain Renaissance Magi could recite the Bible backwards.
Exactly.
That's how good their memory was. Now,
There's 2 memories. The Greeks had 2 memories. One was Mnemosyne, the goddess of the 9 muses. And do you know about Greek mythology at all?
no, she's Greek as well.
All right, yeah. So you
And
know
he knows,
about,
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm sure he does too.
Okay.
But
Yeah,
I'm
but-
more interested in the cosmological factors of the pyramid, and what you've discovered, of course, being the belt of Orion
Well, what
reflecting,
I-
and also how the base of the pyramid in cubits is equal to the diameter of the Earth and Moon together. Do you know that?
Yes.
And that's a fantastic correlation that the ancients had access to knowledge and creation that we've lost, but we somewhere encoded deep in our brains. And
Well, that's precisely what we're saying. The question
Right.
is, how do we
get it back.
how do we understand it?
Yeah.
And
How do we present it?
Yes.
And you know, honestly, please don't get me wrong. I mean, I love listening to it, but this is not the way. It's lovely to listen.
What isn't the way?
No, but let him tell us what
okay.
is the way.
What Robert is saying is we've gone into a demythologizing of looking at the science behind the myth.
Well, let me put it to you this way.
Okay.
All right. Fortunately for me, but also unfortunate, I went through 25 years of battle to get a very simple theory. At the end of the day, it was extremely simple.
Right.
It said that 3 pyramids look like 3 stars of Orion's belt. The argument was very clear. You know, the 2 large ones offset.
Right.
There is a shaft pointing to Orion's belt. There is text. So the circumstantial evidence was extremely strong. But even with that, I had to go through 25 years of battle with academics, with universities, with the governments, with the officials, you name it, with newspapers, finally to get it rigorously tested. And even then, it's going to be argued even more. So, and I know what I had to go through, and I know that I was sticking to the rigorous way of presenting it. So if I started talking the way you did, with I don't mean it offensively, but it would have been brushed aside from the very beginning.
I
It would have been
understand.
blown apart. And then what?
So
Then-
what is your approach now?
Right.
Well, my approach now is that, as I was telling you from the beginning, the new science allows us to speculate intelligently. That's why it's so important. 20 years, 30 years ago, it was different. We're sticking to classical mechanics, and classical mechanics does not allow the kind of speculation we're going to do. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, we can speculate intelligently, and not only that, we reach a point where it is those who resist looking into research of this kind that are blocked. A theoretical physicist has no problem with this.
You can beat the skeptics at their own game.
That's right. Well, I'm telling the Egyptologists, I will be telling the Egyptologists, you're 200 years behind the times.
Absolutely.
Because today, where we stand at the frontier of science, we can legitimately speculate on all sorts of ideas because we know that the universe works in this way and the brain works in this way. So that's all I'm saying, is that it's a very embryonic moment, but it allowed me to deblock myself because I was stuck in classical. That's it. 3 pyramids, 3 stars, it explains it's a religion, they're performing a ritual, and that's the end of it. It was a nice theory, I wrote a lot of books, television, all this stuff.
Right.
Now I can move it ahead
Exactly.
because of that, and because I have a heavyweight behind me, which is who is Professor Chandra Vikrama Singh. So, you know, I've got a 6-gun behind me, sort of, where I can talk.
Yeah.
So this is getting more exciting. There's more big players coming in. The universities of Barcelona, James is
So here
contacting
we
me.
shift from the 6-pack to the 6-gun. And we have a howitzer in the back.
We're gonna go on the OK Corral properly armed. That's what.
Yes,
After 25 years of separation, our pathways cross. I think, Robert, you are so well respected by those who do real, honest-to-goodness field research.
As-
Not ivory tower research, but field research. Because we've been given, Desiree and I and our team, opportunities by the Egyptian authorities to have ground penetrating radar systems as well as other remote sensing tools to do the mathematical and the physical science calculation necessary to fill the larger picture that Robert has so
Right.
exquisitely pictured.
No, I'm telling Michelle to take us a picture. So I have to go in a minute now. And what I propose to you, James, with these nice people around, is let's keep in touch and let's form a loose team with the kind of people I've been talking about. Chandra
Great.
Vikrama Singh, the University of Barcelona. Because I've succeeded among few, and it's not blowing my trumpet, but by resisting and holding strong, I've succeeded in pushing the Egyptologists out of this.
Yes.
I've made them look like, because they were not playing on their own rules. They were attacking me in the wrong way. They lost. The Egyptologists have lost a lot of credibility because of this.
They didn't notice the pigeons, right?
It isn't just Egyptologists. There is a lot of others out there that we need to, but ultimately it's all of you. And, you know, again, like I say, receptive to this kind of ideas, but, you know, Joe Bloggs out there isn't. But will, once we break through, once this is presented properly with solid, and once the media takes it, the media won't touch it the wrong way. It's sad, but it's true.
It is true.
Right. So that's what I'm trying to do, and I'm opening the direction for this. All right?
We thank you, Robert. We thank all of you for this brief conversation.
We're waking up very early in the morning to drive to Phoenix to catch a flight to Paris. Huh?
Hitchhike in Paris, right?
Sorry?
Thank you. Very fun.
So we're so pleased to have you.
But I'm so glad you made it.
And I wanted to say this on behalf of Robert.
Hold on. Yeah, it's the one on yours.
The concept of pigeon, if you look at the word, you have pi, P-I, geon, G-E-O-N, which is a new mathematical unit what we have found for measurement. I'll explain this in the future.
Yeah, really.
So when you meet people, the first thing you ask them is, "At what pigeon are you?"
What pigeon are you?
If they're
I'm number one pigeon.
if they're at number 7, forget it. Not gonna get along.
Exactly. I don't even meet the pigeon. I just go for it.
Okay, Robert, I need a picture with you.
Sure.
Well, I appreciate your
Yes.
efforts and your years of
Absolutely.
fighting
Absolutely.
the
I know
the
what it's
hardcore
like.
skeptics
Totally.
because they're not realizing who we really are
I
as
really
as
don't.
cosmic beings.
I got more and more people, even within the academic circles, and very reluctantly because they're forced to consider it. And it took me a long time. And therefore I know that this is the way to break through.
No.
By the way, we'll be back again because we're planning a
When?
major conference.
Oh, when's
Hopefully
this?
next year. We're trying to bring all these heavyweights.
Here to Sedona?
Robert is my
Robert,
point
yes.
of contact.
Robert's in touch
No,
with
I
us.
said that we will come back and with all the
To New
heavyweights.
York too, you could sponsor. New York, we could do a little conference.
Do we have a picture?
Yeah.
Very. We got
Well,
you guys.
Chapri de moi et Hurtak.
Thank you. Here, give me your phone. Ziffy. I'll take your picture.
James,
Big towers on top of it.
I
Yeah.
have your card.
Yeah.
I'll get in touch.
All right.
And
Bon voyage.